In principle, there are only three ways in which communication can be useful, and I'd like to just run through them now. The first is the easiest, which is information. Information transfer presents data or facts which were not previously known to a person, and the transfer means that the person now knows the facts or data. For example, the longest recorded flight of a domestic chicken is 13 seconds. If you didn't know this fact, you do now. News bulletins, financial statements and announcements all fall into this category. The second way audiences can be changed with communication is through attitude change. Attitudes deal with how we feel about things and involve some cognitive and comparative processing in the brain. For example, if I said that eating chicken was better for you than beef, this might change your attitude towards chicken, especially if you were nutritionally minded. This is the domain of advertising agencies. They are highly skilled at associating values and attitudes with products in our mind, and they hope that when you go shopping, you will choose one brand over another. And despite the fact that, of course, advertising works on everybody else but not us, brand preference is surprisingly effective at differentiating between comparable products. The third area where you can have a direct effect on people using communication is behaviour change. This is really the holy grail of persuasive communication because it results in people actually doing something. It's all very well people having favourable attitudes towards chickens, but if you're Kentucky Fried Chicken, you need people to actually come in and buy some. So those are the three ways people can be changed by communication. Now, obviously, there is an implicit link between the attitudinal approach and the behavioural approach. Advertisers hope that if you can sufficiently change people's feelings, that is their attitudes, towards a product, then there's a greater chance that people will go out and buy it, i.e. change their behaviour. Indeed, this seems like complete common sense. Yet, surprisingly, the science doesn't support this. In fact, there are countless studies that show that changing people's attitudes is not a very effective way of changing people's behaviour. It turns out that our behaviour is motivated by a whole number of influences, of which attitudinal change is only one. And this has opened up a whole new approach to behavioural change. In many respects, the old approach has been turned on its head. The old model saw attitude change as the precursor to behaviour change. In contrast, the new model identifies under what circumstances will the behaviour change, and only then considers the role that attitudes and information may play, if any. This approach is significantly more effective as it does not need to have a product with values and attributes to achieve behaviour change. It just needs a motivation. For example, if you are trying to persuade a number of teenagers not to smoke, the old attitudinal approach would concentrate on the negative health effects of cigarettes, addiction and cost. Some of these might hit their marks, but the behavioural research shows that these teenagers are not particularly interested in the long-term health consequences of smoking. And even the expense is not really a major factor. In fact, the behavioural data shows that what really matters to these teenagers are their boyfriends and girlfriends. Teenage romance, it appears, is a powerful motivator. So in this case, if we can demonstrate that smoking will limit the chances of finding the right boyfriend and maybe reduce the number of Valentine cards that come through the front door, then we are now talking about something that really matters to teenagers. And even more importantly, because we can rank an audience's motivations from strongest to weakest, we can identify in advance which approaches are likely to work and lead to the greatest behaviour change. Marketing can obviously benefit greatly from this behavioural approach, but the really exciting applications are in sectors which do not attempt to sell a product, but where the communication outcome is critical. For example, in the defence sector, where changing behaviour can really be a matter of life and death. The behavioural approach is already being used to understand the motivations of terrorist organisations and populations from which terrorists emerge. This analysis is then used to produce highly persuasive communications which strongly resonate with the audience and encourage behaviour change. Every success in this influence arena replaces the need to use force and reduces casualties on both sides of a conflict. There are obviously many other critical areas such as health education and social responsibility, perhaps even global warming, where a behavioural approach to persuasive communication could produce quantifiable results.